to be here a few minutes ago, is going ahead. And to our surprise, it is achieving a detection capability and an ability to identify, to discriminate that is about 5 times better than it was planned to do. It was roughly planned to achieve the ability to detect and identify down to about 1 kiloton. Actually, it's doing the work down to about 100 tons in all areas of Eurasia and North Africa, which is a very, very pleasant surprise here. But yet, structurally, you have to say that any verification system is not going to be able to monitor what is a zero yield treaty. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty is just that. It is truly comprehensive. It bans nuclear test explosions of any size, all the way down to 0. So the fact of any practical verification system being good or not, certainly in the legal sense, has to be recognized as not being capable of fully monitoring compliance all the way down, for example, to some nuclear firecracker of a few grams of TNT equivalent. You can't do that. So the word of interest here, the term of art, is effective verification. Can effective verification be achieved, which can be defined in a number of ways? For example, to say that a system is effective to the extent that it can quickly detect and identify all nuclear explosions of militarily significant yield in time for the United States, for example, to do something about that. Well, I think that the short answer to that is yes, we can do that. We can do that. It is therefore greatly of concern that in the debate on the United States Senate, both Senator Helms and the Majority Leader, Senator Lott, indicated in formal testimony, in their speeches on the Senate floor, that nuclear tests at the level of 70 kilotons, Senator Lott said, could be carried out and would be hidden from the verification system. To me, that is wrong by about 3 orders of magnitude. We can go down to so much better levels than that. So I'm bothered at several levels, obviously by the overall policy decision, but very much by the fact that the political debate was not informed on the technical issues. So the title of my talk this evening, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, its history, political status, and future prospects. What happened here? Well, what went wrong? Just about everything. Not only the debate in the Senate, perhaps I should state more clearly that the material presented to the Senate by the Clinton administration had almost no content. Normally, in this type of foreign policy issue, national security issue, a series of documents are generated by the administration that is trying to make its case. So, an administration trying to make the case for the North American Free Trade Agreements, or to make the case of a new change in negotiating status for China, trade status, is supported by a huge lobbying effort by the administration. They simply didn't do that for the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. It simply wasn't done. So what went wrong? Almost everything. Does this matter? Well, it matters to the extent that the nuclear non-proliferation regime might unravel. And only time will tell on that matter. Whether it does or not, who knows. But I appreciate the chance this evening to have told you a little about these issues, and I welcome any questions that any of you might have on anything I've said. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to hear them. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell you about it.
Are there some questions? Yes.
I think when we detect a sizable explosion, it's almost too late. I'm interested in what indications along the way there might be that the people who agreed to aren't behaving And this recent information in the Wall Street Journal on a secret agreement supposedly that Cora had made with the Russians to allow them to continue sending know-how and material of nuclear types to Iran, for instance, without revealing it to the communists was the thing that scared me to death. The business of the Chinese,
Well-
if they did or they didn't get spy secrets, that bothers me.
Yes, well, let me say a little about those. First of all, the treaty itself, you correctly point out, bans only nuclear testing, and the international monitoring system can address only that issue, was or was there not a nuclear test. Now, U.S. national technical means can do far more than that, and is working on that. U.S. national technical means, that's to say whatever our spy satellites are doing, can, and I'm sure do, look out for indications of preparations to test. They can look at the whole organization of Russia's special nuclear laboratories, Azamat and Chernobylsk, a number of different ways in which that can be looked at. The question of spying by China raises just a whole multitude of separate questions. At some level, are there secrets at all? If, to the extent that China has, by one method or another, acquired secrets, well, let us remind ourselves the United States has a budget of about $25 billion for the black budget of our own intelligence efforts to learn what other countries are doing. Is it a surprise to Washington that China might have an effort to learn what the United States is doing? To the extent that China has acquired sophisticated nuclear weapons design information from the United States, then a nuclear test ban treaty prevents China, to the extent that China does not test, from developing those designs.
We have no assurance whatsoever whether they're dispensing what they've learned, do we?
Well, they can't build a deployable weapon without a nuclear test program that incorporates, to some extent, the designs are associated with building weapons that are lighter and perhaps easier to deliver. To the extent that China is bound by a comprehensive test ban treaty, which China has signed and has declared an intent to ratify, China is prevented from that level of vertical proliferation to that level of... So the United States, let us understand, is far ahead of any other country in the sophistication of its own nuclear weapons designs. And that is perhaps why it is so hard to give up that lead. But to have a comprehensive test ban treaty, many will argue, does lock in place that lead to the extent that the comprehensive test ban regime holds up.
Yes, you said that General Shalikashvili was talking to all the senators. Can you share with us a little bit what kind of fixes are needed from those discussions?
Well, the senators are concerned about several issues in this treaty that were a surprise to them. It is a treaty that, right from the start, is declared to be of indefinite extent. And some senators didn't like that. The Non-Proliferation Treaty was set up to be a treaty of 25 years extent, that had to be revised, that would be looked at and reviewed, every 5 years. And then eventually it did become of indefinite extent. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty was not like that. That's a concern. The senators, some of them, don't like the fact that there isn't a clear sense of what activities are not prohibited by the treaty. So they would like some agreement, a transparency agreement perhaps, with Russia and with China. So that to the extent, for example, the United States is certainly carrying out a vigorous and sophisticated program of subcritical nuclear tests. And there's no nuclear energy involved, but the United States Department of Energy is taking chunks of plutonium and subjecting them to chemical explosions and compressing them, but not quite to the point of criticality. And to the extent that we can see any indications of Russia doing that, exactly what are they doing? And maybe they are going beyond the point of criticality and are executing very, very low yield tests. That concerns senators. But the principal ones were the ones on Senator Helms' list, that many senators don't believe the stockpile will be reliable without a test program. They don't believe the verification system will work. And they believe that a country could execute some program of building a deployable nuclear weapon with a test program below the level of detectability of the current verification system. So those are the primary technical issues. And I would have to say on those three technical issues, the general is being subjected to a whole barrage of technical information to say that yes, the stockpile is reliable without a test program to support it. In fact, the history of the United States stockpile is that it has never relied on a nuclear test program to assure confidence in the reliability and safety of the weapons. The verification system is, as I've used the term, orders of magnitude better than was characterized in the Senate debate. And many nuclear weapons designers are saying that you simply cannot build a deployable weapon unless you test it at yields that have to be far above what is now known to be the detection level of the current verification system. So on those three basic technical issues, I think the general is getting the message from the senators that those were a concern, and yet that under what might have emerged in an extensive set of formal hearings before the Senate, that those matters really are put to rest. Other questions?
But just to play devil's advocate, didn't the U.S. drop a bomb that wasn't tested?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The Hiroshima bomb was a gun-type device holding two bits of uranium together to form a critical mass. And it is understood that that type of what today would be called a primitive nuclear weapon does not need to be tested. But it is also true to say that that is a type of design which is extremely expensive in terms of the amount of highly enriched uranium that has to be used, because most of it never goes through fissions, it just flies apart. So it's the type of sophisticated weapon, certainly anything to do with boosting or anything to do with working towards a concept of a primary and a secondary. The more sophisticated weapons that in many cases don't require so much uranium and plutonium as the Hiroshima design, that are prevented from being developed by a comprehensive test ban. Yeah.
I'm trying to distill in my head what you've said about the political process. And if I understood correctly, the Senate spent about 3 weeks. And you indicated that it should have been months and months. Seems to me like a citizen of this country that I'm not getting my money's worth from the people that I've elected to the Senate, who even if the president messed up, should have said, hey, we should be spending months on this, and did not do it.
Well,
am I being too critical of my politicians?
no. I don't know. What concerns me most is that in matters of this type, there are certainly going to be some senators who, to the bitter end, are going to be opposed to a comprehensive test ban treaty, and there are going to be a number of senators on the other side who have a great zeal for nuclear arms control. But what bothers me most is that a number of senators in the middle, who I would say are the majority, who in previous years have very clearly indicated their general support for this type of work in nuclear arms control, simply were swept away by the process that you have so characterized. So I testified in the 1980s several times for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the Senate Armed Services, for the Intelligence Committees, on previous arms control treaties. Specifically, there was for a time an important threshold test ban treaty, bilateral between Russia and the Soviet Union and the United States, putting a limit on the allowed size of underground nuclear tests. And at that time, Senator Lugar, many other senators were vigorously in support, not only of the treaty that at that time the Reagan administration was holding hostage, but also spoke vigorously in favor of a comprehensive test ban treaty. Very formally, the United States Senate in about 1994 voted to require the administration to achieve a comprehensive test ban treaty by 1996 in the context of the Senate giving its support to the debate on the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which became a treaty of indefinite extension at about that time, as part of an overall agreement that there would be a comprehensive test ban treaty which bans the vertical proliferation of the nuclear weapon states. All of that is the history of this. And to have it ripped apart in 3 weeks is what certainly is another concern to me.
Why did the administration not present an argument in depth?
I don't know. Others can speak to that. That's, the administration cares about some things. This was just not high on its agenda. To say the general public is not interested in nuclear arms control issues. I think with the end of the Cold War, newspapers are not writing about the fact that we still have huge arsenals, we still have a tremendous capacity to do harm to each other. It's just not a matter of serious public interest. And that, of course, is what drives any administration, especially leading up to presidential elections. So to the extent that it's not in the public eye, it gets neglected in the White House.
This raises the next question in terms of have the candidates, either presidential or vice presidential, expressed themselves on?
Oh yes, they have indeed. So President Gore has spoken vigorously in support of this treaty and has declared an intent at appropriate time in the future to resubmit it if he becomes next president. Governor Bush has said that he is opposed to this treaty, but he supports a moratorium on nuclear testing. So the last nuclear test by the United States was in 1992, and his father actually put in place the current moratorium by the United States on nuclear weapons testing. So the treaty was achieved in an environment in which Russia and China and eventually France and certainly the United Kingdom went into a voluntary moratorium, and that Governor Bush says he would continue. So there would be a question about if there's a moratorium on nuclear testing. I suppose it gives one a greater flexibility to break out and resume testing at some time. But the Pentagon has declared no need for any new nuclear weapons designs. The weapons design labs, as I've indicated, have declared that the present stockpile can be maintained indefinitely. But Governor Bush has said he does not support the comprehensive testing.
One more question, then we can continue the discussion with refreshments outside.
Could you give some kind of assessment then of what's the future holds since there was a failure to sign? Does this mean that we can expect some proliferation, Iran or?
Well, what lies ahead possibly has perhaps two components. One is the fact that we don't have a treaty doesn't remove the need to build a very strong verification system. Because whether or not there's a treaty, we'd sure like to know what China's up to and what Russia might be up to, and North Korea and Iran and Iraq too. So that is going ahead anyway. Then the other side has to do with, well, if there is an indefinite moratorium, over a period of years, unless nuclear war breaks out in South Asia or something like that, when all bets are off. But after a moratorium has been in place for a number of years, then conceptually it might appear that a moratorium does not have some of the advantages that a treaty has. The treaty has the advantages, I didn't talk about them, but the whole concept of on-site inspection, the idea that if some suspicious event happens on foreign territory, then by a well-defined process, countries can demand to inspect that. So there are a number of advantages that a treaty has over a moratorium, and over a period of time they may become apparent. But if nuclear testing breaks out all over the world, then everything falls apart.
Thank you, Dr. Richards, again.